The Celtic languages, these guys. They're not really in a good position, demographically, geographically, culturally, economically, to an extent. I'm Benjamin, and this video is about which Celtic language is most likely to survive. Now, it's not saying that all of them could not survive if situations changed. Absolutely they could. Or 2 or 3 of them. Absolutely. But which one is most likely under the current regime that we live in of the post-war status quo that we live under of increasing social progressivism? Now, that status quo of globalization is beginning to break down, which in my opinion offers hope to the Celtic languages, because the current regime believes in blending everything together. It doesn't believe in localism. It's anti-nationalism in its ethos and its ethics. And for these 6 languages to survive, things do have to change. But given the present situation of our era in the early mid-21st century, with this globalization, pro-progressive status quo beginning to crack up but still in place and beginning to assert itself over dissidents who want more culturalism. How do these languages fare? I'm going to go through each of these 6 languages and explain what are the advantages they have that they could use to save their linguistic identity and cultural heritage, but also the disadvantages that they face, obstacles before them that could lead to their demise. And which one out of these then is most likely to survive long term? And what do we mean by survive? I mean becoming the de facto medium of a society. This language faces enormous obstacles in terms of the French state and the aftermath of the French Revolution. Its singularity, its homogenization, laïcité, everything must be only in French. It's clearly the most oppressed of these languages, even though a century and a half ago it would have been the most vibrant of any of these languages, which is quite sad, the demise that it's seen. It's spoken mostly by the elderly now, but there's been efforts in education, the Diwan, schools, and other efforts. So they are trying, and there has been some successes, very moderate. So cross your fingers and hope. But what do they have in terms of advantages? What's working on their side? Well, if the world's changing, and when I look across the water at France, they look like they could face a civil war in the future. I'm just being honest. Though so does England, because of the globalization and the pro-progressive borderless era that's breaking down, and the failure of multiculturalism, especially in France. But that's more in Paris. In the case of Brittany, it means that if there's a shift in geopolitics, they have this memory all present with them at the moment of being oppressed by the French state. Everything they have had to fight tooth and nail for within living memory. Everything. They're not even allowed to name their children in their own language. That's crazy. In their own country. It's not like someone's coming from Cambodia and demanding that their descendants be named in Cambodian language. This culture is from the landmass that it's in. But I digress. These people potentially have the fire, the passion, because of the awareness of being oppressed by this French Revolution. And that means if there is an opportunity coming with the breaking up of globalization, the decline of this post-war, anything goes, borderless, let everybody do anything they want attitude, if that's finally ending, there's going to be chaos for a period in our history, and they could have an opportunity to seize control of certain sectors. But Breton is in a very dire situation, and I don't see many loopholes for them to get through. To be honest, it does not look very hopeful for Breton. But, like I said, maybe that's a blessing. Maybe they'll get a chance and they'll be aware this is their one shot. Take risks. And that's what I think their advantage is. They will be more willing to take risks to save their language, because of the situation that they've been forced under with France. And that's an advantage in a way. They're bolder because of it. Cornish is, well, it went extinct as a community language, but there was always knowledge of some kind of it in existence on the tongues of the Cornish people. It has been revived officially and recognized as such. It's in some ways in a better situation than Breton, because it has some official recognition and some help at a low level by the regional authority in Cornwall. But there's no territorial integrity. There's no natural community where this is taking root. That's its biggest danger. You cannot survive as a language without an organic community. You just can't. You have to be able to walk out your door and speak to someone in the language and have that be perfectly normal. But it does have one advantage. Like my friend pointed out, actually, it's quite amazing that Cornish lasted for almost 1,000 years after Cornwall was conquered, whilst the much bigger groups of British language speakers in Scotland and Cumbria went out. Why did Cornwall last so long? Because they've got this long, narrow peninsula, and it creates a density that when people come down to trickle down towards the end of the peninsula, they're more likely to be absorbed into the language. And I think the sheer geography of this Cornish peninsular horn is what kept the language alive for so long. You couldn't just go down to the end of Cornwall and not be surrounded by Cornish. When you go down toward the end, actually, it's much wider across than you think. To get to that, you have to go through a narrowing point. It's a very unusual geography. I think anyone who hasn't seen it, go check it out. But because of this, I think Cornish has a really winning combination as a revived language. If you can physically take a town, a village, toward the end of Cornwall, I know house prices there are just through the roof, but political chaos is coming, and that leaves you a window of hope. Political chaos is coming, use it to acquire property toward the end of Cornwall and create a Cornish-speaking village that is completely Cornish. Once they do that, their position will be very stable, remarkably, for how little or few speakers they have. But they're working against extinction I mean, it's a resurrected language. Revived. Let's move on to the next. Welsh is in a fairly good position, considering the other Celtic languages. It has its own limited self-rule. It has signage across the country in Welsh. When I interact with the government here, I use Welsh without fail. It's got a lot of advantages. And a significant written, printed tradition, which kept it as an oral tradition and keeps it so much longer than the other Celtic languages. You might say Welsh, yeah, with having more speakers daily than all of the other Celtic languages combined, and recognition under its own parliament. Surely this is going to be the one that's going to survive. I hope all of them survive, but I hope this language survives. I speak it, I've devoted much of my life to it. But I want to accent a danger that it faces. I meet Welsh speakers who are complacent. They don't have to fight for their language anymore. They take it for granted. I've had a Welsh speaker call me rude for automatically beginning conversations in Welsh. And there's this sense amongst Welsh speakers that Welsh belongs only with the people that we grew up with. It's not something that we go and use when we go down to Cardiff. Right? I meet people who, because I don't speak their dialect or their way, they won't speak Welsh with me. And this is a parochialness mixing with a complacency. That's dangerous, because geopolitical changes are coming. Big ones. The post-war era of globalization and social progressivism is over. It's ending. In that, Wales is in the most dangerous position of all of these languages because it's comfortable. Will our Senedd, our parliament, help us to adapt to the coming changes? I think so. And that's a buffer. But we have to be careful. Part of why I've shifted the channel away from the Welsh language a bit is I'm not interested in this global solidarity, social justice mindset. I've got no interest in it. And that seems to be the funnel, the narrowing point that Welsh language culture is going into at the exact moment when the world is shifting away from that, when things are beginning to change. Will Welsh evolve and overcome the coming changes away from the current ideology of social justice? I think so. But there's a possibility that we become fossilized and die. I'm not here to be negative. I want to help. And these are real problems that Welsh faces. However, I meet kids, young people, crwts, small toddlers, crwtyn, speaking Welsh now in English-speaking areas. That didn't used to happen, and that's because of our Senedd, I think. The boost of confidence. We're growing in confidence in a way that I don't think the other Celtic languages are. So that's a clear, positive advantage. Manx. It's a tiny wee island. And the language did officially die in the 1970s. So it kind of carried on. The thing is, we have recordings of Manx speakers, That's a big difference to Cornish, even though fewer people speak Manx than speak Cornish. However, it's a small island. It's much smaller than Cornwall. Okay? Actually, is it? I'll put the size difference between Man, the Isle of Man, and Cornwall here. Anyway, it's not really got much funding. It's not got a demographic base from which to draw from or even turn to it. So that's a serious disadvantage. But like Cornwall, it does have a geographic advantage. Its population, though less so than it used to be, is largely stationary on an island. Now, people do get around more now than they used to, but having an island, a small one to focus on, gives you an advantage. If you can turn a couple villages over to Manx, you have a serious chance at flipping the entire island. And Manx has another advantage. It's an economic, financial hub. Now, yes, the language of finance and banking is English. However, you have potential to use that to really, really grow your language. I know that would take a lot of work, a lot of money, just like the Cornish idea. But I think there are several similarities between Cornwall and the Isle of Man in terms of their geography is an advantage that they could use to create a defensive position almost from which to grow. It does have its own parliament, the Thai, I'll put the name here, Tywald, and people have spoken Manx in it. They do speak Manx in it. So there is some official authority behind the language at some level. Whether it's going to survive long term depends on whether or not the Manx speakers can find a way to integrate themselves into this financial economy. The Isle of Man is a tax haven. The Isle of Man is a tax haven where people hide money. And for the Manx language to survive, you're going to have to find a way to tap into that. I don't know how you would do that. And that's a serious disadvantage. But if you can overcome that, you have a serious advantage. Scots Gaelic. Now, its geography is not in a good position compared to the Isle of Man and Cornwall. Yes, it is remote, up in the Outer Hebrides mostly, but unlike Cornwall and the Isle of Man, this is actually a defeating factor. There's no way to gather wealth up there. You have to leave. And a lot of wealthy people want to go there who don't speak the language. Historically, it's been marginalized. Scotland colonized its own country from within, pushing back the Celtic speakers as an Anglic culture. Scots. Wales didn't do that in the same way. It was imposed, the English was imposed from another country, right? So that's a big difference. Scotland imposed its English, or Scots, upon the Celtic speakers from within. Wales had English imposed from another country. And I might make a video. Is Scotland even a Celtic country? Let me know if you want that video. But not many people speak it. And it's got some serious problems. But it does have an advantage in terms of the shifting geopolitics we're coming into, this new era of populism being normalized. in that if England goes crazy, and England may go crazy, because of, well, England is being colonized, actually, by the Third World. I mean, please, walk through Birmingham, walk through southeast London, Leicester, Bradford, Manchester, just walk through it. Whole areas that are majority non-ethnically British, culturally, linguistically, it's colonization. And there's going to be a nativist backlash in England, is what I'm saying. That's inevitable now. We just don't know yet what form that will take. If that comes in the form of a Rule Britannia restoration kind of thing, this could really play well in to Scots Gaelic's hands. Because if they come for Scottish devolution, you have that identity of the language to fall back on. And I don't like the idea of weaponizing language, but in a political situation, that's exactly what would happen from the Republican or independent side. They would use that to consolidate an identity around in a situation where they lost some of their powers or independence was being denied by force. However, there is hope that, you don't have to go down that road. There is a bit of Scots Gaelic being spoken in Glasgow. The Scottish Parliament is discussing, or has been discussing, a bill at the time of this video. They want to put Scots Gaelic on parity, Scots Gaelic and English on parity. And I don't know the ins and outs of this bill, but it looks like Scots Gaelic is going to have a lot of the same provisions that the Welsh language has. However, Scotland is not Wales. Scots Gaelic has never belonged to all of Scotland in the same way that all of the other Celtic languages have to their countries. Well, Brittany's a bit different, but you get what I mean. It's not essential to Scottish identity in the same way that Irish is to Irish history and their identity, Welsh is to ours. It's not that same kind of thing. Because yes, the Kingdom of Scotland was under heavy Gaelicization influence, but it was never truly a Gaelic kingdom in the same way that Ireland and Dalriata in the West were. It was Anglic. That's going to play against Scots Gaelic. I hope it's restored across the Highlands. That would be really good. And if it gets a foothold in Glasgow, which I have mixed feelings about in terms of history, having an urban base will be very beneficial, and I see that potential. But its future at present looks more like an accent on a road sign. Scottish independence could be the most deadly thing ever for the Scots Gaelic language, because the new state will have to have a united identity that it chooses, and that's going to be an Anglophone identity, whether it's Scots or English. It's not going to be Scots Gaelic. Now you go to the Parliament and you see like a little accent of Scots Gaelic underneath or above, like a different color in a, what's the word? A font, a smaller font, kind of a decoration. Do you want Scots Gaelic's future to be a decoration? Because when a nation becomes independent, sometimes that's what its minority languages become, as in the case of the next Celtic language, Irish. Ireland became independent at a moment in history Ireland became independent at a moment in history when linguistic policy, when minority languages, when linguistic cultural identity in legislation was not really a thing, and they weren't thinking it through. They wanted their revolution without actually thinking about the consequences for their culture. They had these ideas of the Gaeltachts to keep the language alive, but it didn't work. Yes, Irish is in them, and at least that's something. It's more like the revolution kept the Irish language on life support. It was an Anglo-Irish revolution, creating an Anglo-Irish state. I know some of you won't like that, but each revolution has to have a cultural medium, and the medium of the Irish Revolution or War of Independence was English. Yes, they made provisions for Irish, but out of all the population of Ireland today, less than 1% speaks it daily. It's not essential to Irish identity anymore, and that's dangerous. Its greatest threat actually is this Anglo-Irish identity. They're doing it to themselves, which, again, like with some of the others, if the political situation doesn't change, Irish is gone. One thing that I see when I look at Ireland is they don't have any genuine right of centre party. They have pro-globalization centrists and left-wing nutters. That's literally all they have. If there was a right-wing party that was culturally conservative, I'm not talking about economics and money, I'm talking about cultural conservatism, of course the Irish language would be at the top of their agenda if you're trying to conserve your culture. I hope with the shifts coming in the world that Irish politics can begin to change. But, I mean, if Conor McGregor is your answer to your problems on the right, I don't really see much chance for that, for saving the language in that sense. But what it could do, what Ireland could do, is it has a state. It's the only one with a state amongst the Celtic nations. It should be using that to save its language. It's had 100 years. Why hasn't it done it yet? The responsibility's in your court. Forget colonization and the victimhood of the past. You are responsible, Ireland, for your own language's fate now. It's up to you. You can do it. Come on. You know, they teach the children Irish. It's on road signs. It's around them. A lot of people across Ireland, almost 2 million, are able to, at least at some level, to speak the language. So I don't think it's going away. Ireland's risk is that it becomes an accent. And then it will go away after that. So which one of these languages is most likely to endure, to carry on long term? It's obvious, isn't it? Welsh. And it goes to show you that having your own state doesn't necessarily save your language. Having a bigger population, like Scotland, doesn't necessarily save your language. Being oppressed, giving you passion, isn't necessarily going to save your language if those people doing it to you are using the ideas of liberalism, saying, we're not oppressing you, you can join us freely, you can raise yourselves economically and culturally in France. You are free to do so. But that in itself is a sly card, giving you the wealth of possibility at the cost of your ancestral heritage. Well, if you like this video, leave a like, leave a comment, leave a super like, and we'll get back to you in the next one. Well, thank you to my Patreons on the screen now.